Hi, I'm Dr. Tom Lankering. I want to welcome you back to Healthy Lifestyles. I'm a bioenergetic chiropractor. Been in the Valley with my practice since '84. And from the terms of a bioenergetic chiropractor, basically what that means is I work from a holistic approach using the triangle of health. And the triangle represents the different stressors. So physical, structural stress, biochemical, nutritional stress, mental and emotional stress. And we look at toxins, infections and allergies, and EMFs. EMFs are electromagnetic frequencies. So I've been talking about this, and it's a huge stressor on our body. A lot of times we don't realize it. It's our society that we're dealing with. We have our cell phones, and we have our computers, and dashboards in the car, and everything else. And because it's invisible, a lot of times people don't even really think about it. However, there are things happening in our society these days that are going to have devastating effects on our health. And there's a real call to arms about what's happening, and there's movements. I'm excited that I am involved with some of the major efforts to address 5G. 5G is a technology. I'm not going to say it's a new technology because it's been around for a while, but it's on the horizon if it's not here already. Maybe you've heard about it in the paper of infrastructure happening here in the community or in your community, wherever you're watching this. In certain cities around the country here, it's already been installed and up and operating and around the world. It's exciting, though, that there are over 40 city, counties, and countries that have stopped 5G. And so I'm excited to bring you an expert today in the world of EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, who's going to give us an understanding about why this is so dangerous and the impact that it's going to have on our lives. So my guest today is Paul Harding. Paul, welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm from Phoenix, right? Is that your home there? So,
yes.
Paul, we've recently just met, but give a little introduction as to, you deal with Total EMF Solutions as your company, but EMFs, right? So what's your history and why are you interested in this field?
So I became interested, and thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, thank you.
I became interested after a smart meter was placed on my bedroom wall. And I started waking up at 3 o'clock or 3:12 in the morning. I did that for 2 nights in a row and did a simple Google search of smart meter sleep problems. I found all these other people having issues over in California, and some of them had posted information found on the website, the Defense Intelligence Agency paper, Naval Medical Research Institute paper, and they all mentioned insomnia. So I made a call to the utility after 2 nights of this and asked them to take my smart meter off. They replied with no, and why did I want this to happen? And I told them that it interrupted my sleep, and they kind of laughed, and I thought, well, yeah, it is kind of funny to blame a meter on my sleep. So this continued, and I only found relief when I went out into the forest and away from the city and away from this exposure. I knew that it had to stop because my health was really taking a toll. I was experiencing heart palpitations and migraines and memory loss, tinnitus, leg cramps at night. I would sweat the bed. My stomach issue, my body was falling apart.
Right.
And I was told that if I didn't stop this exposure, it would probably kill me. So it was a matter of life and death for me, and I spent every waking hour researching the mechanism, because without a mechanism, you don't have anything. It was just tinfoil hat.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because in the work that I do in my bioenergetic chiropractic practice, is that, I'm looking for the reasons why, like I mentioned, the triangle of health. And why do people get sick as opposed to, a sick care system? Yeah. We're working with what's interfering as far as health. Yeah. And the different types of symptoms, and again, from a holistic, it could be all of those stressors going on. But the EMFs now, and even like you mentioned, smart meters and the phones, and kids are having with that. You look at, dementia, you look at cancers, you look at diabetes, you look at sleep issues. Huge impacts as to what's going on. So without because I know we can get really technical about it,
Yeah.
but how do we take it so that people can understand what's really going on with these EMFs? So what have you found, and why does it have such long or such a wide range of health impacts or affecting us so much? What's going on with these EMFs?
So they're going internal to the human body. They're passing through the skin and creating internal electric fields. And we can measure that. That's measurable with an oscilloscope. And the 2013 Nobel Prize winners, there's 3 of them, they were all professors, and they found that when you interrupted the intracellular communication, you get neurological diseases, immunological disorders, and diabetes. And so I look for those frequencies that do pass through. To give you an example, the electricity, if it's clean or if it doesn't have these kilohertz frequencies involved, it doesn't pass through the skin. But once you start adding these kilohertz frequencies, then it does go internal and it creates internal electric fields. The National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences 1999 EMF Rapid Report states that anything over 1 millivolt per meter of internal electric fields is associated with cancer because it affects the cellular transduction pathways.
Yeah, and you mentioned, because I didn't want to just kind of glance over it, but you mentioned neurological and immunological situations or mechanisms in our body. I mean, that's a huge health issue of what's going on right now. So we see that those have a huge impact as to what's going on. One of the areas that I work with in the brain-based wellness work that I do is as far as the brain and the brain waves and the sympathetic stress mode and the healing recovery. Because like you mentioned, the sleep and so forth, but it doesn't allow the body then to really recover, recuperate, rejuvenate. So what are some of your things that you've found that have been impacting people with that?
Well, sleep, yeah. You disturb sleep, that's when you're repairing. So the brain is sending little electrical signals to your cells in order for them to repair, and this happens at night. Some scientists have found that you have cryptochrome, it's a magnetoreceptor in your eye, it's an EMF receptor in your eye, and before we had all these man-made exposures or man-made EMF, all we had was natural EMF, and that was from the sun. And so when the sun went down, the signal was being sent back to the pineal gland to produce melatonin, so that your brain can send those signals and it isn't interrupted by any EMF. And so today you don't ever get a break, really. You think the lights are off, but that cryptochrome is still, that's located in the retina of the eye, is still being activated, and so it's sending the wrong signal to the brain.
Yeah, and you mentioned as far as the exposure, because especially with 5G, I mean, we're just going to be constantly bombarded with those frequencies. And my whole focus on my efforts on this is that my understanding is there are thousands of studies that show the dangerous impacts and effects on a biological system. But there are 0 safety studies. I mean, 0 studies that show that it's safe, especially with the 24/7, 365 days a year. What's your take on that?
So there is science out there from independent science saying that there's a harmful effect, and then there's science out there that's saying that there is no effect. And so if you look at the studies that show that there's no effect, they didn't modulate or they didn't put information within that, and I know it's getting a little technical, but it's basically static. You know, if you were to take, you know, like a cup, you know, with a string along it, and you just had the cup and the string, well, there's nothing really going on. Your cells don't hear, you know, you don't hear anything. In order to get a signal from one point to the other, or the information from one point to the other, you've got to what's called modulate it, or create static within that. And we can measure that static, and that static is in the kilohertz range. So that's thousands of cycles per second. And those same frequencies are being used to open up the potassium and sodium ion channels of the cells. So these frequencies have been around for a long time, but now with 5G, it's saturation, and that's what 5G is, really, is a saturation of these signals, and the capability to beamform, to track somebody and give them more energy, or give their device more energy than what we have now. Right now we have like an umbrella system where everything's just out there in your phone. It goes up and down, you know, as far as power is concerned. Whereas with 5G, it's able to track individuals.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, it sounds scary. I mean, you know, from what I've understood, because we really function on an electromagnetic basis, right?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that how our biological systems are all functioning there? So,
Right. Well, we haven't, you know, the science that says that this stuff doesn't pass through the skin didn't look at those kilohertz frequencies. And it's interesting that the FCC or ANSI, they don't look at frequencies under 100 kilohertz. So those are the ones that are very special.
So break that down into terms that I could understand.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So that, you know, people can understand.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Because that sounds like it's a pretty important point there.
Well, it's static, you know, and that static, your cells see that in mainstream science, they're using it to create nerve blocks. So instead of giving you a drug to create numbness, they're giving you these frequencies. And they're doing this on mammals, so it's not just like jellyfish or frogs or things like that. So it's really neat stuff, but the problem is we're saturating ourselves with this all the time. A lot of people are in their homes. Today I can go in and clean up a home, but in a neighborhood with 5G, now those frequencies are everywhere.
Right.
So that's the problem, is that they're going to be outside, inside, doesn't matter. I tested a home in Boston, back in Boston, in a pilot program neighborhood a couple of years ago. And the kids were waking up every 30 minutes. 5 and 8-year-olds, they had black circles. They looked like raccoons. They had black circles around their eyes.
So with that, because I think that that's a pretty important aspect, like you were saying, what's going on in homes now versus with 5G, and even with families. I mean, sleep is being interrupted. It throws off all of our life energies that we're working with, right? So can you again explain, like, what are happening in homes now versus what will happen if we have 5G happening?
So there's static within, and there's always been static produced by generators and back when electricity first started out. And so that static was being created by dimmer switches and by variable frequency drives. Anything with a switching mode power supply where a capacitor wasn't added is creating these static fields within the 60 cycle or 60 hertz field. That electricity radiates from the wall 6 to 8 feet. So yeah, so these people were being exposed to those frequencies, and subsequently, you know, diabetes, you know, was also present in some homes. It just depends on, it's interesting, the frequency.
Yeah.
You know, I see people that are very paranoid with a particular frequency. Across the board, every single one of them have that. And I'm not as good as like Dave Stetzer or Sam Milham. Dave Stetzer claims to have an 85% accuracy when detecting breast cancer. He can just look at the waveforms and see that, you know, it's affecting that. So I guess getting back to your point, those have been around for a while, not the same ones in everybody's home, and they had different variables, you know, like where they were sleeping and that sort of thing. Where with 5G, now everybody gets it.
Yeah.
And there's no escaping it.
Yeah, well, huge, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there is no escaping, and everybody
Right,
gets it
right.
all the time,
Right.
And we don't know what that's going to do to us. We have an idea from what we already know about electromagnetic frequencies and what's going on there. So, you know, one of the things is that I work with, and again, brainwave patterns, but, you know, Sherman's waves, the energy given off by the Earth, right, 7.83 hertz. Here in the mountains, that's where we're at. You know, at the beach, it's about 8, but you go to a city, you know, and it can start from 16 to 26 to 28 or 30 years, which is what I've heard is one of the reasons, because there's a lot going on right now, but why people are so edgy, why they're so, because they're in that brainwave pattern. But actually what I've also been hearing, because now we're looking at, I've heard from anywhere from 60,000 to 120,000 5G satellites, and how that's going to be bombarding our planet and is going to change the electromagnetic frequency of the Earth, which could have impacts on weather and all kinds of things going on. So it's not just what's happening with people, but it's the impact, the potential impact on the whole planet. From, I mean, we're changing and the energy patterns in the planet here. So yeah, what are some of the other things that you find, I think maybe most impactful or surprising, or things that people need to know about this?
Well, it is creating those kilohertz frequencies on the electric grid, and so the grid is now overwhelmed because it was designed to just handle 60 hertz. So now those frequencies are traveling through the Earth. And so they can be really high in some areas. They can go up one leg, the voltage can go up one leg and down the other. And you can't change that once it's there.
Right.
So that's becoming, a big problem too.
Yeah. Yeah. So that old, you can't fool Mother Nature. You can't mess around. We're messing around with Mother Nature at this point, right?
Oh yeah, they're showing that frogs are being affected. They're disappearing. Salamanders and things that are really close to the ground and the earth. The skin protects us up to a certain point. Those 60 hertz frequencies, the impedance is 3,000 ohms, but once you get up over 1.7 kilohertz, it drops to about 500 ohms. And so now it goes internal.
Wow.
So those lower frequencies, our skin protected us. But now those kilohertz frequencies are pretty much everywhere. You find them all over the place now.
Wow. And so you'll go into homes now, though, right? And you do an evaluation of what's going on. What's your experience? Are people starting to become more aware now of what's happening? I mean, even like you mentioned, your sleep patterns. I know smart meters are a big issue, and more people are starting to understand what's happening. What's your take like with the smart meters and with what's happening?
Well, when they're on the house, I only go to sick people's homes, and they call me out after they've done tests, and nobody can.
They're looking for mold. They're looking for different things.
They're looking for they just want to feel good.
Right.
They've been practicing eating organic foods and exercising is big. That's huge. If that helps you out quite a bit. But the organic foods, and they've cleaned up their air, and they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars chasing things to make them feel good. We all want to feel good.
Right.
Some people use drugs and alcohol and that sort of thing to feel good. But really the best way is the natural way.
We're looking as far as health is concerned. I mean, people really want to get healthy now.
Right? And they want to sleep. They just want to sleep. And
sleep is a huge issue.
So these smart meters are dumping data typically every 4 hours, and that was happening. That's what I found to be happening. I have the equipment to measure all night, and I have a relative that's actually an IT person for the smart grid. And they didn't know why they were waking up at 3:15 every morning.
Wow.
And they didn't put the two and two together. They thought that the people complaining about it were all kooky.
Sure.
And so they realized that it was affecting them too. Nobody's immune to this.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned as far as being kooky, because I know people, I mean, it's funny because even just a short while ago, people were like saying, "Are you a conspiracy theorist?" And I was like, "I don't know." So I had to Google, and I looked up conspiracy theorist, and I was like, "I'll be damned." I said, "I'm a conspiracy theorist." But the reason, because I started asking questions, because people have these different health issues. We're trying to get to the cause. We're trying to get to the root matter. And when we keep asking why and why and why, and it takes us down, the money line, with these corporations, because they know what's going on. They know the impacts with that. You look at the other environmental things, and I think that you have the same situations. Now, you have found a why of, like I said, these EMFs that we've known for a long time. And you even mentioned too, I mean, these EMFs are nothing brand new, right? They go back to, what would you say, Woodrow Wilson or something like that, right?
Yeah,
So,
we were talking about that earlier. Woodrow Wilson, executive order in 1917, when everybody was sick, shut down the wireless. They were using those same frequencies that we're finding in the modulation today, but in much more powerful antennas. They were using 200,000 and 300,000 watt systems to power these massive antennas to talk across the ocean. They were so powerful that you didn't even need to be tuned to that frequency.
wow.
And yeah.
Was
so
that the Spanish pandemic? Was that the?
I think it was
the
right around the same.
1918,
Yeah,
I think,
right around the same time. I think they termed it the Spanish flu or whatever about 10 or 15 years later. But it was interesting that he shut down the wireless.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing correlation between EMFs and the immune system and the health of people, of what's going on. And I think they've even correlated when certain health issues or pandemics or different things have gone on, that there's been a change of technology and frequencies and energies and so forth. Am I?
Yeah, you're right on. I mean, you look at the Maricopa County death rates since the smart meter was installed in 2011, and they break records every year. They've been breaking records every year, where in the past they would even off for a few years.
Wow.
Yeah, but it stresses the immune system. I noticed growing up in Phoenix that people were typically tan and full of color, and now they're all pale and white and pasty. And
Really?
Oh yeah.
I have a friend of mine who is a cardiologist who's moved up into this area, but he moved away from Phoenix because he said the 5G was so intense down there and so forth.
It's more intense down there because we don't have many trees, and we don't have many hills and things to block that exposure. A lot of the big technology companies like Honeywell and Motorola found it a perfect place for electronics because it's dry and you're able to transmit through that. It's flat, it's dry, it's flat. There's not much that gets in the way as far as water is concerned because this gets absorbed by water. So yeah, we warned the Arizona Department of Health Services, we warned the Corporation Commission back in 2012, 2013 when we were trying to fight the smart meters or just, we wanted to have an option to take them off the house and for no fee. And so we were able to get a hold of the emails between the director at that time and the Corporation Commission, and the director at that time said intuitively he didn't see a problem with smart meters. So now, being a health expert, now he's an intuitive. On top of that, yeah. So we sent that email got sent to the governor and I think the FBI and elected officials, and within a few weeks he had stepped down with no place to go and no one to replace him.
Wow.
So it's interesting that he just commented not too long ago on the governor, on CNBC and said, "Oh yeah, you should have shut things down earlier." Or well,
Oh really? Huh?
Yeah. He was commenting on something that we warned. We warned a pandemic was coming. You stress the immune system out. We're using all mainstream science to do this. This isn't tinfoil hat stuff. It's all just putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And
it's interesting you mentioned the tinfoil hat because it's really, like you said, mainstream science. I mean, it's it's just, I think, having a willingness. And you had just mentioned too, as far as water attracts or absorbs.
Well, yeah. So they found that the radar, the frequency of the radar, 2.4 gigahertz, was able to heat water when a technician up in the North Pole, his candy bar melted, and actually he cooked himself to death by heating. They would go up there and heat themselves up. So it disturbs the dipole of the water molecule, and so that 2.4 gigahertz we use for Wi-Fi, and we also use it to heat water in our microwave ovens.
Yeah. And that's why they mention like the eyes and the different organs in the body are more susceptible to this type of technology. Let me ask you, because we're winding down with our time here, but what can people do? they've been hearing this, they're concerned about it, they want to know what they can do. I know we have our state organization, it's called Coloradans for Safe Technology. The website is CO for Safe Tech. You help with mitigation at home. How do people get a hold of you? You have a phone number that you want to release or a website for people to go to?
Sure, they can call the cell phone 602-757-8624 or go to totalemfsolutions.com.
Okay.
And yeah, if they really are wondering if this is a deal, go camping.
Right.
You ever heard of a happy camper?
Right, there you go, right?
There's a reason why.
Yeah, well, grounding, right? I mean, just putting your bare feet on the ground is a great way to connect as far as energy is concerned. Yeah?
Well, the best way is actually stand on a piece of aluminum foil, and you're a capacitor, and you can store up to 3,000 volts in your body, and so you discharge that static or that energy in your body just by standing on aluminum foil for 90 seconds.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? It's
Yeah.
like a grounding pad or something.
Well, the grounding pad, you have to be careful because, again, it's attached to the ground, and you got all those kilohertz frequencies that are running through it. So you may not be getting the benefit of a very low frequency because your skin is protecting you, but you'll find the high frequency in your body, and I see that with the oscilloscope all the time. People think that they're doing a really good thing by attaching themselves to that ground wire, and it'll increase exposure.
Wow.
So we have to be very careful where we do that, or with the right equipment.
Yeah. So fascinating. So I really appreciate the time here and your information. It's hopefully this program will start getting people thinking about what's going on. Realize that even though we can't see it, but a lot of health issues that people are dealing with or suffering from, this could be a huge factor. So yeah, Paul, I really appreciate it. So
And thank you.
yeah.
Thank you very much for having me.
And you're here. You're helping people with their homes around while you're up visiting here, and probably come back, and so of
course.
So yeah. So my guest today has been Paul Harding with Total EMF Solutions, right? So it's a huge issue, and your health is taking the toll for it. So hopefully we've given you some insights. Again, Colorado for Safe Technology is an organization here in Colorado. Website CO4safetech.com is a website, and hopefully you start paying attention, maybe get involved, help us out with this, and bring awareness to the people, because we have a crisis on our hands. And so thank you very much for your time, your interest, and let me know if I can be of any further service for you. My name's Dr. Tom Lankering. You've been watching Healthy Lifestyles. Thanks, and make it a great day.